So I've learned about 5 lessons in the last year using this bandsaw, and I thought I would go over them for you, just in case anybody would benefit from them. The first is that ended up needing to come up with some way of sawing a small log. You see here a small board that I'm getting ready to resaw, which if I had a large enough shop bandsaw, I wouldn't need to do it out on this main kind of sawmill type equipment, but I just needed some way to hold those, and so I ended up making these little small aluminum pieces that go around to both sides of the board and have a little point. And so with a mallet or a stick on the back side, I kind of whack it into the wood and then tighten up the hold down bolt when I'm done, and that should suffice to hold that piece in place when I'm sawing it. So the next thing is that I used pipe material for this regular log hold down, and that is not quite thick enough, which I was suspicious of when I was making it. But you see that it's probably just like a 14 gauge thickness there. You can kind of see the edge of the metal, and this one has gotten a little bit bent, and I'm going to need to replace it before too long here. And anyway, so I probably will just go to a thicker size, a wall, like a Schedule 40 pipe, rather than the small size that's here, something to that effect. Anyway, they'll have to work that out. I guess particularly when I'm rolling a log over against it, turning a cant, that it can kind of take a lot of force to turn over and may slam against the backstop, and that's when it would get bent. Okay, so third lesson is that this system of raising and lowering the sawing head is not as accurate as I wish it was. And I think what it is it is not a positive movement. It relies. I'm wrapping up the cord, which is positive, but then it's had about a 1/16 of an inch variation over time as I use it. Sometimes, like I'll make the same. I'll turn the big wheel up there the same number of notches, and each little notch is supposed to be a 1/16 of an inch, and that'll work out correctly. But then other times it'll be a 1/16 higher, or it'll be a 1/16 lower. And so every time I have to get down there with the tape measure and measure, and then maybe kind of jiggle it a little bit, trying to get it to, come the rest of the way out. And I think there's several things going on. One is that I can crank it up, but then it may wind a little differently depending upon how it's winding. So it may, like you can see, maybe like sometimes it might lap over onto itself, but so I think there can be some variance in how it winds. I think the biggest variance is that I have to kind of go up past the point in the notch where I want to stop it, and then let it kind of sink back into the notch. And so there's this friction factor on the post where it might sort of settle at a position that's a little bit higher than it sometimes would. Anyway, so I think some sort of screw adjustment where you turn a threaded rod a certain number of times, and there's a threaded rod maybe on both sides, would ultimately have been better and more positive. And I might go back and retrofit it with something like that at some point in the future, but I suspect I will probably just continue just to go along with it. But I'm out of wood, and I need to cut some more. In fact, I've got some more logs kind of there and there ready to go, and I need to get to them. And over time actually that was my last weekend project, was building a little cedar chest, and I've built this shed. You see the siding on it is all wood that was sawed on this sawmill, and most of the wood, the 2x4s on the inside, and particularly all the ones supporting the roof were sawed with this sawmill. The 2x4s in the back wall I ran out, and so those are factory purchased. But this little shed was basically for the to dry wood in, and I'm just about empty there. There's just a few boards left from my last cutting, but I'm pretty much out. So it's definitely time to restock and let some wood start drying again. Anyway, so I will probably just continue to live with the lack of a consistency in the adjustment for a little while. Another thing is I wish my 4 horsepower motor had been higher. I kind of guessed it was kind of be borderline, and it's definitely borderline. I wish it was probably, I'd like to be going twice as fast with maybe 2.5 times the horsepower. So probably something like a 10 horsepower would have been better, and it would be nice to have be going faster. It's not a problem on like 12-inch logs, but if I go much over 12-inch, then I have to go slower, and if I'm up around 18, 24-inch logs, then it's really going slow. There's a lot of wood chips that need to clear out of there, and it's just not going fast enough to really clear them out. And a little bit more horsepower to keep from binding, because occasionally I'll have to kind of sort of stop when it's just about to stall out. All right, so next thing I learned is that I needed a cart desperately to move this thing around. So basically I have a little cart here with 4 swivel casters, and I can roll this thing right off onto it and move it around and into storage like in my garage. So that has been very urgent. It was urgently needed. The first couple times it was majorly awkward to try to get this thing around and up and onto the track. And my first method was just falling apart and not really working. And so very, very quickly I came up with this and built it, and there could be some room for improvement, but it is basically doing the job of I can roll the whole thing right off onto it, and then roll back the other way once I'm ready to go. By the way, I don't have my full track laid out. I'm going to cut some short pieces today, and so I didn't bother bringing up my other track piece. So I got another bonus lesson for you. When a pine apparently will exude pine sap, and so I've got some nice benches I made out of pine, and there is all sorts of sap coming out of them. So in fact, this one I wiped off with alcohol and cleaned it all up, but it continues to come out. So I guess I'm just going to let them sit here all summer long, and hopefully at some point they'll finally stop. But I've not had that happen with any other pine. But then this is the only one that I've made out of. This is the only project I made out of pine, and I painted a dark color, and I set it out in the sun. So it's just something to be aware of. I mean, of course, this is so sticky that you definitely don't want to sit on it in these conditions. And I did not kiln dry the wood, which might have gotten all the sap out of it, perhaps. Although I can only imagine how messy of a job that would have been to have been dealing with pine wood in a kiln that was just dripping sap everywhere. So, those are my lessons learned. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it.